Pamela, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Do you want to start by telling us a little bit about your background and how you got into business and why, and then maybe move in towards how you started your business?
Sure. How and why I got into business. I guess on reflection, I was always quite a driven young person growing up. I was very disciplined, always kind of creative and wanting to do my own things. But more importantly, I grew up with a dad who had many businesses and I'd like to say was a serial entrepreneur. And so growing up, I was lucky enough to kind of live that through him. And most dinners and nights were spent with him sharing highlights of his day, challenges he was facing, how he got through them. And I kind of, he gets quite scared as to how much I remember, but I also feel like I experienced it through him. So that would be a big influence in that, my dad and his business stories growing up. But equally, I had a mum who was super passionate about fashion. I lost her when I was 18 to cancer, but she was super passionate about fashion. She was known at school for her dress sense and kind of embedded in me from a young age the importance of dressing the part, looking the part. And so I guess Dad's last business was in fashion manufacturing, and he was one of the first Australian businesses to open an office in China, and he was producing mainly business shirts and suits. And at that time, I was studying Bachelor of Business Marketing and kind of thinking to myself, again, I never thought to work for anyone. It was never, and that's why I say growing up, I just knew I wanted to have my own business and do my own thing. And it felt like it happened so organically because all the pieces just fell together. I knew I wanted to work with Dad, but not work directly with Dad. I knew I wanted to work in fashion, but not directly in fashion. And I was studying marketing and brand and was super passionate about the power of brand storytelling. And 17 years ago, which is when I started Total Image Group straight out of uni at 21, uniforms were certainly not about fashion. And Total Image Group is a uniform company. Uniforms were certainly not about brand. You know, it was really about polyester, and polyester is good, but it was really bad back then. And it still can be bad if you don't get it right. And unless you were Westpac or Qantas, no one really cared about your uniform and your staff feeling good and looking good. And so I saw a real opportunity to leverage all those things and came up with a business that was about creating fashion forward, fit for purpose uniforms and really talking about telling a brand story through what people wore. And we were one of the first businesses to really do that and offer that to a business with 50 staff and a business with 100,000 staff.
Okay, so you're designing around the brand and what they want to look like. So this is aspirational for the employees in the company, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's really important, I think, for companies to think about, and this was the messaging in that, what does your uniform mean? What does it mean to the people wearing it? How do they feel? And also, what does it mean to the people in its presence? And is it telling your brand story? Is it communicating what you're about? And that was, you know, our biggest kind of point of difference.
Yeah, okay. And when you went, you know, at the dinner table and your dad was talking business and those sorts of things, from what age can you remember that sort of stuff being how it was, or it was always just like that?
It was always just like that. And I have quite a good memory. I actually have moments of kindergarten that I remember, which make, like, you know, and I talked to my husband about it. I found my kindergarten wallet the other day. It's bright pink. And inside was a little post-it that I wrote with Dad because I used to get canteen money. And in my great kindy writing, I had a budget, and I think I was getting 50 cents. And, you know, back then that would buy me something in school. And I was saving 20 cents and spending 20 cents and putting 10 cents aside for something else. And I had that literally in my kindergarten wallet. So I guess just, Dad's comment.
So your first budget, you had that written down?
Yes, my first budget. Yeah,
right.
in my fluoro pink wallet.
Oh, that's fantastic. So how much of an advantage do you feel like that has, being exposed to those types of lessons? Like, that doesn't sound like a big deal to some people perhaps, but to me, that's a massive advantage, right? You're being exposed to that thinking strategically, financial, just the wisdom that goes with it, right?
Yeah, I often think back and reflect on this. And actually, one of the last assignments I had to do in uni was, do you think entrepreneurs are born or can they be taught? And I always think that's a real interesting question, because I have two boys, a 5-month-old and a 4-year-old. And my eldest, he just has this innate I'm there coaching and obviously talking about yoga or meditation and the things I love and homegrown veggies. And he just has naturally taken to them. And I'm wondering whether my youngest, who's 5 months old, whether I expose him to the same thing, whether he will. Because I definitely think it's an element of both. I think entrepreneurship is innate, but equally, if you're given, some people are given nothing and others are given it all and don't get anywhere. So I just think it's all of it combined.
It's actually, it's a super interesting topic, and it's a really interesting thing to observe as a parent as well, because I mean, I've got 4 kids and they're all adults now.
Wow.
Sort of between 19 and 24, and seeing them as they grew up and their different personality traits, and some are more entrepreneurial than others, some are more creative than others. And in many respects, you look at what you did as a parent and you expose them to very similar things. Some took to different parts of it or took different lessons from it. And you can't really, it's the same with anybody, I guess. You can't treat them all exactly the same, because they do have different strengths and weaknesses. But that, to your point about whether it's taught or you're born with it, I do think it's probably a little bit of both, because some people do innately have that gift of being slightly more entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And you can see that, really easily. But then there's other people who will do really well in business because they grind it out. And they do the hard yards. Now you've got some stories about doing hard yards, right?
Yes, I do.
Should we get into that now, about how you started the business?
We can. And I guess what the hard yards you're referencing are the 100 phone calls a day for the first 12 months of the business. So when I started Total Image, I was 21 and I had just finished uni. So I was still in that, and I think it's important to kind of frame the scenario. I was still in that post-uni, used to doing assignments, writing business plans. I was in that zone. I was young and I thought, okay, I need to build a database. And so I had done my business plan. I had researched and decided that I wanted to target set verticals. And I chose hospitality and healthcare. In fact, I started with nursing homes, found a database. Actually, it was the white pages, printed them out. I still have those folders actually, just as a keepsake. And every single day I set myself the task of making 100 phone calls a day and building and asking questions, where do you buy your uniform? Are you looking for a new uniform provider? And I did get told, no, we're not looking many times. But what surprised me was how open people were to talk to me. It was a business to business phone call. And for 12 months, I made 100 calls a day, and I was learning about my target market, who they were buying off, what they were paying. And I was creating strategy and shaping my marketing and pricing, because I was a new business. I had a blank, canvas to work on, and it really served me. And I often get asked, well, how did you do that for 12 months? And my answer is always, I actually didn't notice the time. I was so driven, and I had set, every day was a new day. And I kind of had this thinking that if I won one client, then the rest would snowball. And that's exactly what happened. What I do know now, though, is uniforms, whilst fun, have a huge sales process and a long lead time. So from quote to close is usually 12 months. I wish I knew that back then.
Right. Well, actually, what I wanted to ask you was, if you were starting again now, going back to that point, without the same context that you've obviously built over the years in terms of relationships and customers, but if you're starting from scratch again like that, would you do that again, or would you do it differently? What would be the adjustments you'd make around that? Because that's incredible that you did that, and it obviously got you to where, or helped get you to where you had to go. And it tells people, I think, a lot about tenacity and determination and drive. But what would you do differently if you were starting?
I don't know. I think that's a really interesting question, and I often reflect back, but I still apply those principles today. We were in this hashtag hustle. I set a theme mode to drive my team each year, and we'd had a few hard hits and had been going through a rough time. And so I created a theme called hashtag hustle. And that was picking up the phone and going back to basics and cold calling. And I tasked my team with verticals and databases, and I tasked, that would be sales, to cold call and prospect. And I targeted marketing with the same kind of thing, but via EDMs. And so would I change anything? I would probably change how hard I was on myself. And probably not do as many hard hours, but equally that made me who I am today. I had zero balance, and I had a number of health scares very early on because I would just work stupid hours and not rest. I had a few seizures as a result of stress and overworking. And I was very young to have experienced that, and the doctors put it down to stress. So for me, I guess my lesson would be, it's great to work hard, but you also need to balance health, because with no health, there's no work. So, but in terms of cold calling, I think I'd do it again.
You do that again? So
Yeah.
I was just curious to see if over that time there was something else that came out of that. And it's not just cold calling, right? It is.
It's strategic.
But like you say,
yes.
you're not calling people saying, can I sell you uniforms? They say no, you hang up, you move on. It's not just that by numbers.
Correct.
You're asking them about their needs, their market. So you're starting to really drill down, and over the time, over 12 months, you're talking to 5,000 people, right? So
and what convinced me was that it wasn't a sales call. I wasn't looking to get their credit card details and close a deal over the phone. And that made me very comfortable to call. And the reason I bring that up is because the only job I ever had outside of this was when I was in uni. I worked for the MS Society as a telemarketer, and I was tasked with, it was the only job I could get. No one else would hire me because I had no experience. And I was tasked with calling people at home between 6 and 8 o'clock at night, which is the worst time to call anyone because it's bath time, it's dinner time, and try to sell them raffle tickets for $50 a ticket and take their credit card details over the phone. So I did that for 1.5 years.
Oh, really? I don't think it gets any harder than that, does it?
No, it doesn't.
You will be battle hardened after doing that for 1.5 years.
Yes, I certainly got hung up on many times.
But you learn to just shrug that off, right? It doesn't really matter. That's part of the process, part of learning.
And it geared me for what I then did, because my uniform calls were certainly nowhere near as difficult.
Much more cordial, I imagine, in terms of the conversations and the responses. Yeah. So then you go start your business. You're 21?
Yes.
What year are we talking here?
It was 17 years ago. So 05.
Okay. 2005.
Yes. Yeah.
2005. Okay. So you start off, is it just you?
Yes.
Okay. And as you built the business, when did you bring on your first employees?
So the business planning stage was just me, but very quickly I went to uni and had a very good friend, and we were both brainstorming about what to do, and I convinced her to join me in a marketing capacity. So a few months in, she started. She was the first employee. And
I've done a little bit of research here. And so were you always, I don't think you were always called the owner of your own business, were you?
No, I definitely wasn't. And I think a big part of that was I was very aware and mindful of my age. I was 21 years old when I started, my lack of experience, and I was in an industry that was very experienced, very age old. And so I didn't think it was appropriate to call myself the CEO. I also thought when I was hiring staff moving forward, being so young, I was mindful of what my title would be and how that would reflect my experience. And I really wanted to earn my stripes and prove myself. Dad was in the business. He would fly in and out of the country at the time and coach me and very much be there helping with the finances and stuff. And I didn't want everyone to think, oh, dad's girl spoiled, got the business. So yeah, and clients, it served me in that I was this young sales coordinator. That was my first title.
That was your first title, sales coordinator.
Sales coordinator, and I was pitching for their business, and I was super passionate. And I felt like they needed to give me a go so that this business, Total Image, that they didn't know was mine, would see me succeed. And over the years, I went from sales coordinator to sales account manager to sales manager to sales director.
Gave yourself some good promotion
to CEO. And when I became CEO, I had some real long-term clients, like I'm saying, maybe 10 years in, and they were in absolute shock that it was my business. Really? They had no idea. I used it because it was also a great price. Oh, I have to check with management. I can't approve that price. You know, I'm not authorized to make that happen. I need to check. It was a great tool from a client standpoint. And it always made us appear bigger as well.
Yep.
Because there was always someone above me when there wasn't. So in those early days of pitching, the fact that they had a sales coordinator, there must be a sales manager, and there must be a, you know, you don't really get asked how many people in your team when you're pitching.
No, but it's implied, right?
It is. So yeah, and finally CEO. I did get poached many times as well, which was hilarious.
From your own business. That's a cracker.
Yeah.
And so it was 10 years before you actually became CEO
roundabout
formally.
Yeah.
Okay, that's incredible. Have you ever heard any other stories of those types of things, of anyone doing that type of thing?
No, not really, not in that regard. I've heard people talking about teams, like I have an accounts team, I have or pretending to be accounts to make their business be bigger, but not specifically in terms of their job title.
Yeah, okay.
But I was quite literal about it actually as well, in that my behavior reflected my role and how I approached my team and you know, Yeah, I just wanted to earn my stripes in an industry and amongst peers.
But presumably your first employees all knew that you were the owner.
Yes.
And well, yeah. So within the group, it was understood.
Yes.
From a strategic.
But also on that regard, I played dad into a much bigger villain than he really was.
Yeah, right.
You know, he's backing me. I have to report to him financially, and pay rises just are not, you know.
Well, that's not a bad way to do it, right? Then you're not the bad guy, somebody else is.
No.
Good stuff. Were you always going to go into business? Was business always going to be your thing?
Yeah, I don't ever remember thinking about doing anything else. Like that, all I ever wanted was to do my own thing. Yeah. But I didn't stress about it. I kind of just thought a lot about it. And I think, as I said earlier, it feels like it just happened organically as a result of that.
Yeah, combining the business side, the fashion side, sort of.
Yeah, all the pieces just came together.
Yeah, fell together. Yeah, that's really good. In terms of your strengths as a business owner and operator, what would you say your biggest strength is, and how does it help you succeed?
I think my biggest strength is also, to a degree, a weakness. And that's because I really believe complacency kills, but I'm also very futuristic, and I'm always, what's next? What can we do different? What can we do better? And I'm constantly trying to evolve the business and move forward and change. And that's great. And that's resulted in our success, because no one can keep up. Like, we're forever changing things and doing things differently and innovating. But I feel like it's a bit of a weakness as well, because I forget to stop and enjoy the moment, or pause and celebrate the wins. It's always like, what's next? What's next? What's next?
Yeah, you tick things off and then you straight away onto the next thing. And there is a time and place for that sort of brief pause, even just to enjoy that moment of achieving a goal before you go on to the next part.
And I think my team need that too. And that's what I've become a lot more aware of. You know, it's very exciting to continue to push, and they love that, and being under an entrepreneur who's always pushing to do things different. But equally, they need to be recognized for what we've achieved before we move on to the next.
Yeah, especially when you're all pulling together for the same goal.
Yes.
Once you achieve it, you do want that brief moment to, it doesn't have to be huge, but it's like anything, same as business, sport, anything like that, where you've achieved the goal, you do need to just take that time to enjoy it, just even for a moment.
Absolutely.
Or a day, or however long, and process it, because that's, you know, the previous however many days, months, years was all around that. And if you don't, you're sort of robbing yourself a little bit of that reward. And I think you can reset and go again.
Agree. And I think it comes into also that health mindset, like actually celebrating wins and pausing is healthy. Going 1,000 miles is not always the healthy choice.
And not necessarily sustainable, right?
No, correct. And I knew, like, I mean, you know, whilst I never say never, this is a long-term plan for me. Like, I wasn't looking to go hard for 8 years and then sell my business. I always want the business to be in a position where I can choose to sell it, but it's a great business and I feel like we've still got a lot more to do. So I'm not interested in selling, and to sustain that level, you need to be kind to yourself and pause every now and then.
Yeah, the mindset there is different, right? When you're looking at things from a long-term perspective, everything can slow down a little bit.
Correct.
And you can look at it in terms of decades, or, you know, if you look at, and I look at this myself in terms of my business and in terms of, you know, investment type managers, you know, there's guys in our industry who are in their 90s and still doing what they do. And it's because they love it, they love the challenge, and they're thinking not in terms of necessarily selling the business, but they're thinking in terms of doing what they love to do.
Correct.
And so when you're thinking like that, you can build things for the really long term. And if you want to sell, you can sell. But you've got that long-term mindset. It's a real game changer, as opposed to just trying to ramp something up for an exit.
Oh, I agree. And I think it's just so important. Like, it's very much a long-term strategy, and I want to be able to enjoy it and continue to enjoy it. But I'm about designing the life I want to live, you know, and having my own business gives me that power. So if I can shape it so that maybe in the future I am only working 3 days a week, but still involved, you know, they're the kind of choices you have if you work on them from the get-go.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of innovating, you're talking about innovation, and I'm a big believer that complacency in business, or in any business, does kill. So you do have to innovate. What are you talking about when you're talking about innovation? Is it in terms of fashion and styles, or is it in terms of production and process? What are you?
It's at every level, to be absolutely honest. It's literally at every level. I meet regularly with marketing, with production, with sales. I'm across our service side. It's how can we be better in every aspect of what we do? Of course, from a design and product standpoint, we're always looking to source new technology fabrics and sustainable choices, but equally, from a business standpoint, we probably have one of the largest portfolio of online stores, and our online online software development is something we've become known for,
Okay.
because you don't need to be a huge client for us to offer you a customized online store. We have over 90 individual online stores for our clients. It's designed specifically for them,
Okay.
and their
Yep.
uniform range is viewed. So staff log on and it's like they're shopping for that brand in uniform.
Yeah, okay. All right. So it's really next level in terms
Yes,
of the way it's designed, and the online side of it, a big deal, I guess, going forward,
I'd
right?
say. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And in terms of weaknesses, I know you said that can be a weakness, but what would you say your biggest weakness is, and how did you overcome it, especially in the early days?
I would say in the early days, my biggest weakness would be taking everything personally.
Yeah.
You know, I was young, I was fiery, I was passionate. You know, every client pitch I didn't win felt like it was a personal, loss.
Yeah.
Any staff member that moved on, I took it personally. What am I doing wrong? Why, and I'd lose sleep and I'd get anxious about it. And so I feel like it's great to take things personal to an extent, but it's not personal at all.
Yeah, yeah.
And so just kind of trying to navigate that space. Like, people do move on. And I guess it's kind of that lesson, and what I often come back to is two things, and my team often quote it, I got it quoted back to me today, is kill it with kindness. So even if someone leaves and I feel so personally upset by it, I kill it with kindness, because I want everyone to leave on good terms, and it always does come back, and I've gotten much better at that. And to be honest, I haven't had that feeling personally when someone leaves for a number of years. But equally, count to 10. When you take things personal, you're fiery, you're passionate, you might react too quickly. And I got myself into a lot of trouble as a result of taking things personally and reacting too quickly. So I'll say to my team, I need to count to 10. If they want an answer, I'm not known to give an instant answer. I just always need time to process. And then I'm confident and carefully thought out in terms of how I handle something.
And do you think that comes with experience or from learning? And when I say experience, I think with age, we tend to get a little more reflective and a little bit less emotional about some of these things. I know when I was younger, I can relate, but I wasn't very good at some of those sorts of things, right?
Yeah.
And you learn through partially making those mistakes.
Correct.
But then I think as you also get older, you become a little bit more reflective, and you see that other people have got their lives to live and to grow, and sometimes that doesn't fit with what your plans might be and what you're doing. So sometimes the best thing is for people to move on, or for customers that are a better fit somewhere else, or whatever else it might be. But
no, I agree.
Right?
It is. And I think for me, I'm quite a reflective person. I reflect quarterly, I reflect at the end of every year. And I always feel like all of us have so much to learn. And so I'm always trying to understand why I reacted a certain way, or why I felt a certain way, and how I can be better or do better next time. And I think as a leader, that is so important. I think once you get to a point where you're like, oh, I don't really need to learn or evolve or reflect, then you're no longer really leading.
What would you say your best leadership quality is? Or what would your staff say your best leadership quality is?
Good question. I don't know. Maybe killing it with kindness, or the passion side of it. They say it's contagious. Everyone is super passionate about uniforms, and prior to coming in, they never looked at it that way. But for me, actually, they would say it's the honesty, and that would come post-COVID. I'm just an honest leader. I'm not ashamed to show emotion or express exactly where we're at. They feel it. I don't lie about the numbers. I don't set unrealistic expectations. I want them to succeed, and they feel that. So if we're not hitting budget and I'm stressed, they feel that, and they want to hit budget and relieve that stress. So it's kind of like this real honest journey as to where we're at. And I think they most respect that, because at any one time they know where they stand and where the business stands. Because
COVID was a once in a generation, or maybe once in a lifetime type event, right? Where everyone has to work out how to deal with it personally, and also at a family level, but also on a business level. And everyone dealt with it differently in different ways. And like you say, then you've got a choice to make as a leader. How do you map things out when the world's changed? And you can try and sugarcoat it, or you can be, like you're saying, upfront, honest, and just lay it all out and say, this is where we're at. Yeah. And people do respect that, right? Or they understand it at the very least, and then they respect it because of that. How did you go through the whole COVID process? Was it difficult? I mean, uniforms is and I don't really understand your industry in the way obviously you would, but in terms of, as an outsider looking in, I would expect that working from home doesn't help generate new business in terms of uniforms.
where, obviously it was extremely difficult, and those first few months, the shock and everyone looking to you for answers or certainty around what was next, that was really hard. And then having to communicate what our plan was to the team and make hard decisions and communicate those, that was probably the hardest part. When we decided to reduce hours and restructure some of the staff, we had 40 team members, and I had one-on-one meetings with every single one of them across a 2-day period on Zoom. And it was full on, but they respected that I took the time, be it warehouse to customer service, to meet with every single person and talk about the plan and the decision. And we did a survey post-COVID, and we sent it out anonymously, and everyone wrote back that actually 100% agreed with every decision I made as a leader and as a company, what we decided to do to invest in our future. From a revenue standpoint, I've always been very mindful about diversification, because I got my first big shot, very early on in the business, about a year in, and that skewed our sales, and that one client took up 70% of our revenue. And I was like, oh my God, this is really scary. And so, 17 years ago or 16 years in, I knew that I needed to diversify. So we have always operated across healthcare, hospitality, retail, construction on purpose. And when COVID hit, retail crashed, hospitality crashed, but healthcare and construction needed us more than ever. And so we were able to quickly rejig our strategy, our marketing, and heavily target those spaces, and not make up all the lost revenue, but certainly make up a chunk of it. And
at that point, it becomes about surviving, right?
Correct.
I mean, when you get COVID coming in, this is not about being clever. This is about survival. So many businesses got blindsided by that. That's not something you can necessarily predict. So when it happens, you've just got to deal with it as best as you possibly can. And to have that diversification built in is actually something that is pretty smart, in terms of not necessarily for COVID specifically, but to be that diversified lets you survive shocks that might come.
Absolutely, because every industry is subject to go through that wave, and it's very easy to find yourself kind of specifically connected to one industry, and to me that was always high risk. But equally, innovation really served us in that period. So we went from having monthly or quarterly innovation workshops to having them weekly through COVID, because we had the time to, and we would just, the mindset was, let's throw anything out there and see what sticks. And we launched new industries, we launched new products, we just kept going with innovation, and it really served us.
Yeah, okay, that's excellent. What was the biggest mistake you ever made in business?
I think getting caught up on revenue, not profit. I think a lot of people fall into that, but after we had this real high growth period for the first 8 years of our business. And then what happened, which is quite natural in a business cycle, is the sales started to kind of even out, but then they started to drop off, in that we were not winning as much business as we were losing. And I found it really difficult to retain our revenue annually, consistently each year, and achieve growth. And so through that time, I feel like I was attracting customers whose values didn't align with ours. And kind of the message was, yes, we have to hustle. And that meant to what extent, value alignment, were they profitable? And it created not a great kind of energy in the business with our clients. We've always had awesome relationships. And so I feel like that's a lesson that now we walk away, regardless of the sales size, if it's not profitable, but most importantly, if values don't align and there's not this mutual respect for the relationship, we're setting ourselves up to fail.
Yeah. And I guess that's easy to do, especially in the early days of a business, where you want to try and, or any phase, I guess, but where you can easily get caught up chasing revenue, chasing sales. And that will come down, if it's like you say, if it's a big client, that can come down and cutting costs and encroach on your margins. And if it's the sorts of clients that will just move on to the next people, if they can just save $1, that's not the sort of relationship you want to build, right?
No.
And sometimes that's a hard lesson learned.
It is. And again, like just watching back, because even recently COVID kind of forced us into that position as well, where you almost feel like any client you want to take on. But the minute we sat as a team and I spoke to the business about, we're no longer doing this does not serve us. If a client doesn't tick these boxes, we're walking away, in a nice way, but we're walking away. And it's just been incredible to me to watch the caliber of clients now rolling in who tick all the boxes. Right. Because we kind of, we put ourselves back in that mindset.
You set the bar, right? And set the boundaries of what, it's like any relationship. If you put in place, these are the boundaries and that's how it works, and you don't deviate, then that's the result.
Yeah. So it's,
What would you say the best advice you've ever been given was? And it doesn't have to be business advice, it could be life advice, but what was the best advice?
so from a business standpoint, I would say if you can find something like to start a business, the best advice I heard is if you have a business and you're passionate about it and you love what you do, but it's also profitable, then you're onto something really special. Because you can't start a business that is just profit-based or just passion-based. It's kind of got to be a balance, and owning your own business is really tough. Yes, there's highs, but there's lots of lows, lots of challenges, and that passion really fuels you and gets you through those moments where it doesn't feel so tough. But if you're not passionate and it's just about the money, then you don't tend to stick it through, and vice versa. So I feel
that sounds very similar to that Jim Collins Good to Great book, where he talks about those what you're passionate about, what you're good at, and what you can monetize. And it's the intersection of those three items is where your business sweet spot is, I guess.
My favorite business book.
Yeah,
Good to Great.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So I always remember reading the what is it, the Hare and the Fox.
Yes, the hedgehog.
For me, that was hedgehog. Yes,
yes,
Hare and the Fox. Different labels. But yeah, the hedgehog. I mean, I just love that story. It resonates so well in terms of that long-term view of being the hedgehog versus the fox, right?
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. And I just think there's so many key takeaways in that book. For me, early on when I first read it, was get the right people on the bus doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And that has just followed us through, because early on I was hiring for the wrong reasons. We had a terrible culture. There was no focus on having the right people. And that has just changed our entire business, that mindset of are the right people on the bus doing the right thing.
It's incredible some of those subtle changes that you can make from learning from other people. Just in a simple book like that, where there's so many different things in that particular book, but implementing those, how much of a change it can make in terms of the structure of your business and the long-term view. You know? Who's a business person that inspires you the most and why?
I always find that such a hard question because I don't have one person. I get inspired by many people in business.
Well, that's all right. We've got time.
Okay. Be it books like, Jim Collins, or I love Diane von Furstenberg's story, or the Nike story, because that kind of fuels my fashion and manufacturing background.
Okay, yeah.
So I get inspired by I have an advisory board of women that I meet with monthly. They all have their own businesses, and we share our challenges and where we're at, and they inspire me regularly. Yeah, I think podcasts, like I get inspired. So I don't have one set person.
No, but that is the nature of learning, right? There's so many, especially today, where with the internet, go back 30 years, like when my dad was in business and that type of thing, you didn't have that type of thing. You had a few autobiographies you could buy, and the people around you who you knew who were successful, that was it, really.
Yeah, agree.
Or
it's become a lot more accessible.
Yeah, if you want to learn, you can learn.
Correct.
Like there are so many good people to learn from.
Yeah, agree.
Business books. Now we just covered a couple, but is there any? Is there a few favorites?
Oh, yes, I have so many favorites. I've just drawn a blank.
It's like picking your favorite children, which you can't do.
It is, and I was actually at home taking some photos because I always get stuck on names. Like I read Jack Welch straight from the gut, and I read that right before COVID hit, like the February of, and that just served me at that point in time, because he was about analyzing the market, and if it's going through a hard time, then you need to like analyze your P&L, and it was just it really served me. Think Rich, Grow Rich, Delivering Happiness. So many.
Do you enjoy? The Phil Knight.
Yeah.
Do you get the time to read as much as you'd like, or do
no? I go through phases, and again, lots of self-reflection on that. I used to put this pressure because I'm such a disciplined person that oh my God, I'm not reading, it's just not good enough. But I have a 5-month-old, I have a 4-year-old. I'm at a different stage in life right now, and I know when I'm in that zone of reading, I can smash out like 10 books in a really short period.
Right.
But right now, that's a little more difficult. So I'll probably aim for like 3 really good books in a year, where I absolutely will get that done. But just, usually it's a lot more than that. Just depends. 5-month-old. not so much
life
time
changes,
to read.
life moves on. Yeah, you have to adapt.
Yeah,
Right? There's no choice, but it becomes a luxury. And then,
it does.
but once they leave home, and
pick
as
it
they
back
get older, it becomes
Yeah.
back into the, as does just about most things that go
Yes,
with living life.
yes.
Have you got a quote about business or life or leadership that particularly resonates with you?
Yes, definitely. And it's Reid Hoffman, don't try and beat the competition at their own game, invent a game and then master it.
Okay. This is Reid Hoffman. This is LinkedIn guy, right?
Yes, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for me, why that, it's don't try and beat the competition at their own game, create your own game and then master it. We get so caught up in business, watching our competitors, watching what the industry is doing. And I feel like I fell into that trap. And it meant that what we were creating wasn't so unique. I do not look at competitor websites. I do not, like, it's good to be informed with what's happening in the industry, but I view us as completely different and just trying to master our own unique strategy and going for it and not caring about what anyone else does. So I often go back to that. It's easy to get trapped looking at competitors.
I think that's really powerful and an underrated thought process. I always remember I did an MBA many years ago, and I don't think it was really worth doing in many respects because there's so many books you can read and learn the same sorts of things. But one of the books that we did, actually, there were a few good books that came out of that. One was Good to Great. Another one was Blue Ocean Strategy. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but that book is all of the case studies and the businesses that went not in the bloodbath of the ocean where everyone's fighting the same, and like you're saying, the competitors. Find a space that's total blue ocean that no one else is even in, so there's no competitors. It goes to what Reid Hoffman's saying. And the one that I felt was probably the epitome of the examples within that was Cirque du Soleil. They're talking about how they looked at that as a case study of it was a circus, but you don't look at it and go, oh, we're going to go to the circus, which one should we go to? And you just happen to go, that's in its own space that nobody else is in. And there's a few examples of businesses that have done that. That's a great book. I can highly recommend that. That book, in terms of the way that you're thinking about the blue ocean strategy and where you want to be out by yourself, where there's no one else around, and you just your own industry almost.
Love that.
What's next for your business? What do you got planned that you can share?
There's so much planned, but I guess for us, it's just continuing on this journey of being. We've really become recognized from a design standpoint. I am a design and kind of a trusted brand in this space. So across all industries, we get hit up around consultancy. So it's just really staying true to that. We're unveiling a whole stack of new uniforms over the next few months for some major brands in a whole lot of different industries. I also launched my own fashion label, Classic Capsule Collection Wardrobe. It's classic, timeless pieces of women's wear. And I launched that 1.5 years ago. So some exciting stuff coming with that.
That's related to work.
It's always like a side hobby.
Workout kits, or
not
is it
necessarily.
Unrelated?
It's fashion, but my style is very classic, very corporate. But there's t-shirts, there's shorts. It's just classic, timeless style. Hence the name Capsule Collection Wardrobe. I was always scared to get into
What's the website address?
Capsulecollectionwardrobe.com.au.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Marcel, can you put that in the show notes?
Yep, will do.
Thanks. Just testing to make sure you're still with us, mate. Haven't fallen asleep at the wheel. Okay, so that's covered off everything I wanted to cover off. Pamela, thank you very much for joining us on the show. It was a pleasure to have you share your experiences in business, and best of luck with everything in the future.
Thank you for having me. My absolute pleasure.
Thank you.